Would you please join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next up is action on the agenda. Any changes at all, Rick?
There are no changes to the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
All right, we have a motion from Dave, second by Jen. All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Thank you. Agenda is approved. Next is action on the minutes from the previous meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for the regular meeting held on March 8th, 2021, as presented.
Second.
All right, we have a motion from Jen, second by Mike. Any questions at all about those minutes? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Those are approved. Next is action on the vouchers.
I'll make a motion to approve general checking account vouchers totaling $211,286.17 and building fund 49 vouchers totaling $3,226,098.44 as presented.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion from Mike, second by Dave. Any questions or comments about any of those vouchers listed in board docs? All right, all in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? All right, that passes. We did not have anyone sign up for public comment, so we will move on to item number 2, referendum update from Mike Huffman.
Good evening. We are a construction project in transition right now. There's a number of spaces that are getting turned over right after spring break. Stephen and his crew will be busy with a lot of moving activities. But over the course of the last couple of weeks, we've
Over the course of the
last couple of weeks, we've accomplished
punch list reviews, started with the middle school, the addition, as well as half of the renovations to the kitchen cafeteria there. So those spaces are looking very good, and our punch list activity showed just some minor that had to be made.
And those will be done before the move-in activity happens. So left at the middle school, we've got more interior renovation. The other half of that kitchen cafeteria renovation can take place now. And then, of course, the site work around the new addition. So the schedule looks good there. Comfortably finish in midsummer, with the last bit of activity there being a resurface of the parking lot. Over at the high school, the STEM wing is now very nearly complete. The punch list being conducted there in the last couple of weeks. Items being addressed, and no I don't think there's anything there of note that I wanted to point out, other than we've got some engineering review to do on one of the dust collector systems. It has some noise issues, so that'll be addressed here in the near term. And then, of course, the progress on the other side of the high school with the gym continues. We're waiting for the metal panels. Hope to see those in mid-April and see more of a significant exterior visual change to that part of the project. Pool's going very well. I've got some photos in there of the last of the concrete wall pours. Will allow them to move on to the finished materials of the pool. And then finally, the renovations to the existing pool, that is now filled in, and they have started construction on the elevator shaft that will lead up to the new event entry. And then most of the demolition in the existing locker rooms has happened, and we're starting to put those back together. On the financial side, since we last talked in January, there has been some expenditure to the contingency line item, and that has starts with an expenditure in the weight room. So it was $50,000 in expenditure for weight room equipment, and then I've also listed where some of the other money was spent, and with that, I'll take your questions.
Any questions at all for Mike?
From your viewpoint, the move-in at the end of this week, it's all systems go, we're good to go at the high school. Awesome.
Mike, how do you feel about that, where that contingency sits now, the budgeted amount for that contingency based on what we have left to do?
Yeah, so we caught up quite a few things over the last 2 months. So we go with 544,000, I believe is the number. It feels good. We're through that kind of the risky area of discovery in the old pool area and the new lobby space. Feel like we're significantly beyond any structural risk. So it seems like a good position.
Those metal panels, are those going to go in between where the brick stops and where the roof is?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Any other questions for Mike? All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Next up is the superintendent update. Rich.
I have a couple different things that I want to share with the board. Give an update on the COVID numbers, both in our district and throughout the county. And then also talk a little bit about, just at a kind of a high level, the federal funding that's been made available to school districts. So, as I've mentioned in the last few meetings, the number of positive COVID cases continues to decline. It's at a level right now, not in the district, but of our community throughout the school district, to levels that are below back before the school year started. We're currently at, as of Thursday of last week, 7.08 active cases per 10,000 community members. The number of positive cases across our school district amongst our student staff is also continuing to decrease, with currently in our dashboard that went out at the end of last week, we had no staff positive cases actively or close contacts from school. We had only one student active positive case, no student close contacts from the school, and 10 student close contacts from out of school exposures. So we're encouraged by the continued downward trend of the number of positive cases, but also continuing to remain vigilant in following our safety protocols. Rock County Public Health reports that, again, as of Thursday, March 18th, there were 4 COVID-19 patients in Rock County hospitals across the county, and that number has continued to decrease. And they are continuing to track the number of vaccines that have been provided across the county. As of the end of last week, over 35,000 have received their first dose, and over 22,000 have received their second vaccine dose. In our district, nearly all staff who wish to be vaccinated have been fully vaccinated. The ones that haven't yet have received their first dose and are waiting for the second dose. And we're also monitoring some new CDC guidance for those who have been vaccinated and also for physical distancing. And we'll be working with Rock County Health Department over the upcoming days on what that new guidance means for schools. So before I talk about some information on federal funding, are there any questions or comments, thoughts on the positive COVID cases and the vaccine data? And as I shared last week, we added some additional students on site in our elementary schools. That has been going well, and we're continuing to make preparations at the middle school and high school for April 5th, bringing students on 5 times a week on site. We continue to offer a virtual option for all students from 4K through 12th grade. And then some information about federal funding. Funding is for both the CARES Act and ESSER funds are for COVID-related expenses for school districts. That funding is coming from the federal government through the state, so we're working with DPI, and DPI is finalizing the details. But that funding really gives us an opportunity to address student needs, whether those are safety concerns or instructional or social and emotional needs. And in both rounds that have been worked through so far, both rounds of funding, it is one-time funding. So we want to make sure that we're not making long-term commitments with that one-time funding and not tying it into any recurring expenses, but it does give us a way to address issues that have come up because of COVID. So just as an overview, the first round of funding was called the CARES Act. The focus there has really been on health and safety projects, on PP&E, things like that. Those funds are available from March of 2020, so they've been available for 1 year and can be spent up through September of 2022. And our district received a total of about $240,000 in that funding. And again, that we've really focused on health and safety types projects with that money. Cleaning supplies, plexiglass barriers, sprayers for cleaning, costs of making sure our buses are clean between routes, those types of things. And then round 2 are the ESSER funds. And the focus there is going to be more on meeting student needs and addressing unfinished learning for students, whether it's academic, physical, or social and emotional support that students need. Our plan, and we've been developing protocol for decisions on the use of these funds. We want to identify both current and future student needs based on data, and invest in ways that impact across multiple grade levels and across multiple schools. Those funds are available going back to March of 2020 up through September of 2023. So another year after the first round funds can be used, the round 2 funds are still available. And at this time, the amount that we're receiving is a little bit over $800,000. So it's a significant amount of money, and they haven't yet finalized the total amount that each district will get, but we're anticipating that it will be at least $800,000. And again, we're looking at different ways with whether it's curriculum, universal instruction, or providing support for students, but looking for ways to address that unfinished learning for students between now and the start of next school year. But so again, if there are any questions, comments, or thoughts from board members.
Rich, 2 questions. With the updated guidelines for 3 feet of distancing for masks, student and staff, does that change the preparation at all for coming back in 7 through 12, or is it pretty much uniform under the old and under the new?
It hasn't changed the guideline. Our expectations as of now. We want to have discussion with Rock County Health Department. I'll be meeting with them on Thursday, and that'll be one of the topics that we'll be meeting and talking through. We do want to, we know that as our students are coming back, we're not going to be able to maintain that 6 feet of physical distancing at all times. And we knew that prior to the CDC announcement recently. But we want to reinforce the importance of keeping that physical distancing to the greatest extent possible. So we'll have a conversation with Rock County Health Department later this week, find out what their recommendations are and if their recommendations are going to change, and then look at how that may or may not impact our plans for bringing students back and what that can look like.
Other question, with summer school coming up, I know the course offerings are out there. If parents find the need or the desire to have their kids into some of the more core curriculum to catch up or reinforce some skills, do we have the capacity to expand that if it were necessary at this point? If there, again, I'm only speculating that there may or may not happen, but is there capacity to add sessions for those things if demand should dictate it?
We're looking at, it's a balance of demand and our space availability and staffing availability. So as we're planning summer offerings for students, we're looking for a combination of enrichment opportunities for students, but also addressing core academic needs. And as long as we have the staffing and the space available and there's a desire from families for those courses, we want to make sure that we're providing those opportunities.
Thank you.
I just had one quick question, Rich. You said we received $240,000 from the CARES Act. Has that money all been spent? You said it could be used up through September of 22, I believe you said.
Yeah, it's available through September 22. I don't think there's been payment out for all of them, but for that entire amount. But there has been, we have more in expenses than that amount when we look at all of the different things that we've done with PP&E and health and safety measures.
So then basically, we're looking at the additional $800,000 and how we're going to spend that.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for Rich?
I just have one. What about the restrictions and guidelines for that 800,000?
We're still waiting for the official word from DPI, but what we've gotten so far, it's really around ways to address both the things that we spent that initial round for, so you can spend that money on additional health and safety aspects, but it's more of a focus on identifying student needs, and it's fairly broad. The ability to use those funds, you have to be able to justify that what you did was to address identified student needs, but it's fairly broad.
Is there a measurement tool then that reporting of some sort back to?
Yes, yep. There's documents that DPI will collect where you identify what you decided to spend that money on. Yep.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, Rich. Next on the agenda is
Next up is the Joint Technology Finance Committee report. Mike?
Thanks, Rick. The Finance Committee and Technology Committee met together on March 10th to discuss a few things. The first thing that we looked at very briefly, and I will go over it very briefly, is the long-term capital plan for technology. It is not in board docs, but just know board members, if you wanted to see a copy of it, I'm sure Ryan Curlis would be happy to send it to you. It just outlays for the next 10 years by building the expenses that are foreseen for technology. I think it's awesome that we have a plan. I think it's awesome that it goes out for 10 years. So thank you, Ryan, for putting that together. The majority of our time on technology was spent on a proposal for the E-rate plan. So I will summarize what's in board docs that came from Ryan. So in January, the district submitted an RFP, a request for proposal through E-rate to replace all the wireless access points in the district, not including those that were covered by the referendum because those are already new. This will allow the district to replace aging access point equipment and consolidate from 3 models, which we currently have, to 1 model. The E-rate program we've talked a little bit about in past board meetings, but that is a program that's under the direction of the FCC, which is the Federal Communications Commission. And it's designed to provide expanded and affordable broadband services to schools and libraries. The program allows districts to receive a percentage discount to qualified proposals or to qualifying proposals. And that discount that you get is based on a percentage of free and reduced lunch recipients within the district. So the district received 2 proposals from the RFP. One was from BCSIS-IT, which I have no idea what those initials stand for, but that's the company's name, which came back at $244,530. And then another one from Presidio, which came back at $227,986 for hardware and licensing. It was decided that Presidio would be the chosen provider based on its price, how it responded to the aspects of the RFP, and its history within the district. So based on that approximate $228,000 proposal and the 50% discount that the district is supposed to get through E-rate, it is estimated that the district would need to commit to a minimum of $14,000 during the 2021-2022 school year to make this happen. This is not in need of a vote, it's just informational. So how did I do, Ryan? Okay, I don't know if anyone has any questions, but I would like to thank Ryan for, I think this covers 2 really important things. One is that we're staying really current with technology and access to internet, which we know is really crucial for our students. It's their life. And also it shows that we're trying to be as good of stewards with our taxpayers' dollars as we can. If we can save 50% on a proposal like that, I think that speaks highly of what we're trying to do as a district and what we're trying to do as a board. Any questions?
Do we know that we're going to get that 50% discount? I see it says estimated.
No, we don't know that. And I'm quick to point out that there's a lot of estimated and anticipated. There are a lot of steps throughout the process. And although we do our due diligence to do the best we can to try to earn those, there is no guarantee. And the review process is quite lengthy, up to and including a year in some cases, typically a few months. And I anticipate we will receive it. But to move forward with a project, of course, if we didn't receive it, we would be obligated to pay for the entirety of it out of district funds.
So Ryan, that 50% that's based on a reduced in free lunch program?
It is, yep. It's the members that sign up and participate in the National School Lunch, the free and reduce program.
The more you have in that program, the more the bigger discount we would get.
That is correct. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Ryan, I just have a quick question. When was this done last? So what was the history?
When was this refresh done of our access points?
Yes.
It was a rolling refresh in the past. It was done over 5, 6, and 7 years for each of the 3 different types. And that's a bit of a simplification because it is based on expansion of need in addition to replacement at the time. So what we're doing is we're taking an average of those and saying, here's our opportunity to bring everything up to what we've done with the referendum construction in the past year.
And about how long do you anticipate that being current?
5 to 7 years is the typical life expectancy for networking equipment in general. There is a range based on the type of equipment and its use. I would anticipate that same 5 to 7 year range.
Okay, thank you.
A couple things that I think stood out to me as we talked about this at the committee was that the timing is good in a lot of different ways. In one, it leverages outside federal dollars to help make this possible. And secondly, as we approach the end of our fiscal year and look to budgeting for next year, it gives us a fairly high confidence of being able to budget a certain number into the overall document. So, Ryan, thanks for the report and the timing. And like I said, it seems to make a lot of sense with what's presented here.
And just to piggyback off of one of Jen's questions, and I think we covered this in the meeting. You said that about 5 to 6 years is the life cycle of the access points. So is replacement of the access points then in the 10-year plan?
It is.
Yeah.
Yep, it's in there.
That's important to know. Yeah. So that's been built in as an expected cost within those 5 to 6 years. So
Yes.
thanks. Any other questions for Ryan? Thank you, Mr. Curlis.
Thanks, everyone.
The finance part of the joint meeting was sort of led by Stephen. He also handed out a 5-year capital maintenance and improvement plan. And the majority of the costs for the 2021-22 school year is some roofing at one of the buildings and then some asphalt replacement in a couple of the other buildings. I'm going to let Stephen go into more details on that, but again, this is in board docs and this is an action item after Stephen's done making his presentation. But good to know that we have a 5-year plan. We talked at the meeting how important it is to stay on top of these capital improvement plans, not to wait until, just as an example, the roof is leaking before you replace it, but to anticipate that in advance. So again, thank you for all the time and effort you've put into this, Stephen, and I will turn the reins over to you.
I knew I was going to forget that. Yeah, and I just wanted to give a huge shout out to Tara and Jeremy and their building admin and also the teachers and really every building staff member at those 2 buildings. They've done a tremendous job being team players and being on board for this moving process. With all the planning and what we've got in place, I think it'll be a very smooth one, and we'll be ready to go come April 5th to teach out of those spaces. So I just wanted to elaborate a little bit and give a shout out to everybody that's been a part of that. Now on to the fun stuff. So at the Finance Committee, I presented a bit longer of a PowerPoint. This one is abbreviated. Really what I took out of the PowerPoint for this was the first few slides that went through the whole how we develop and the process that we go through on an annual basis to eventually bring forth a recommendation of projects that would meet the budget that we've outlined for the upcoming fiscal year. Next one. Sorry. An important piece of An important piece of information that I always include with the PowerPoint is really highlighting the previous investments that the board has made in our facilities over the last, 5+ years. What I also like to highlight too is that in the 2014-15 fiscal year and previous, our annual budget was typically in the $450,000 range. That number significantly increased with the successful passage of our first operational referendum to try to chip off as much deferred capital maintenance projects as we can to try to catch back up with things that have been kicked down the road, if you will. So you see in the years after we passed the operational referendum, the yearly total of projects that we were tackling significantly jumped up, and we were able to significantly work at that list.
Steven?
Yes.
What's your budget this year for this coming, for the 2021?
If you go to the next slide, Kim. So the budget that the board approved last year this time was about $900,000 for Fund 10, $85,000 for Fund 80. And then if you remember back about May of last year, based on really the successful bids that we got, part of the high school project, and with the COVID shutdown and the financial uncertainty, we moved the STEM elevator that was approved originally into Fund 49, and that reduced the annual total for Fund 10 to just under $700,000, and still $85,000 for a Fund 80 project at Shilbrick Park. And that leads me into my next piece, working with Rich and Carrie in the development of this year's projects. We try to find what the budget would consider palatable for us to plan for. And the number that we decided to target for this upcoming fiscal year would be $700,000 again for Fund 10 and $50,000 for improvements at Shilbrick Park being funded from Fund 80.
So if you don't mind.
Got it.
So if you don't mind me asking, because when we were at $450,000, I'm of the opinion, and I don't think there'd be too many people that would disagree with me, that really put us way behind the 8 ball, and it really, basically everything kind of snowballed, and we really couldn't keep up with what we needed to do. I think and you can elaborate on whether or not we're a lot better off now than we were back in 14-15. And one thing that I'm kind of curious is, as we go forward, you always like to see a somewhat consistent budget from year to year. It's not always possible, but you kind of like to see that. It makes it a lot easier for Carrie to figure all that out. But my question is at $700,000 or $750,000, whatever it may be, from year to year, is that going to be enough to allow us to maintain and keep pace with the preventative maintenance and the surprises that you get every year, or is it just this year that we're kind of focusing on that, and we're hoping to put a little bit more into your budget in the coming years?
In my opinion, I'm the worst presenter ever up here. Okay. Yes, absolutely.
I just want to add another layer. If you recall, the state budget cycle is a 2-year budget cycle. And so we are waiting for the legislature to determine what we're going to have next year. So when you have even more unknowns, that is part of the reason why we were. And it doesn't, if our resources are more than we anticipate, we can revisit the projects. And also, because it's 700 this year doesn't necessarily mean that's what it's going to be into the future. But just next year, there's a lot of question marks with the budget cycle. So it was we were conservative, and in our conversations, and I think, Stephen, you shared this, that he was confident that we won't fall behind if we do the 700 next year.
Then I have another kind of follow-up question for you, Carrie, and for Stephen. With the Fund 46, if I remember correctly, we have to have a 10-year capital maintenance plan, correct? Do we only need, as a board, need to approve a 5-year, or do we have to also approve the 10-year?
So historically, the Board of Ed is approving a 5-year, and I believe that's related to your obligation in state law to provide a safe and healthful learning environment and maintain facilities. There's a couple places where that's mentioned in the law.
So, diving into the proposed projects for the upcoming fiscal year. The first project that we are proposing on doing is at East. At East, we want to replace the air handling unit that serves the main office, principal's office, and restroom area there. That we currently find an issue every winter where the heat in that area is unable to keep up with the temperatures that drop sub-zero. That's served by, this is radiant wall fin units. So also in the wintertime in non-cooling season, there's no exchange of fresh air and all that good stuff in that space. So this project rose to the top to be able to address those two issues. And then over at West, we are proposing to finish off the last phase of the locker and hallway painting project. So we've done the first two phases, and then the new addition in the back has the new paint scheme. And then the block in the middle where the old art room and old library used to be, that's the block that we would be addressing, and that would be a winter break project next year. The next project is if you remember in years past, we try to tackle one significant roofing project a year, which is part of our roof replacement cycle. So we don't come to you saying that it's raining inside the classrooms. This is our way of staying on top of it. This would be replacing the remainder of the roof at Harmony that was constructed in 2005. That was a 15-year life cycle roof that was put on in 2005. So we're at the point where that needs to be replaced. And the roof system that we propose putting on is a 30-year roof. We've always put 30-year roofs on. You find a lot better value with those, and we're able to get through the cycle without having to double back on projects we've already done. The second project at Harmony is re-insulating about just over 100 feet of ductwork that runs over the roof that over time has gotten water saturated, and there's no coming back from that. At Northside, we are looking at tackling phase 2 of the pavement replacement project that we started last year. Last year, we did the whole play pad and surrounding area. This year is the phase 2 of that project, which is the back parking lot and that little blue asphalt connecting sidewalk there. So, and that also includes replacing the broken up concrete entry at that back door that gets a lot of traffic from teachers and custodial staff rolling stuff in and out. So that summarizes Northside. And then getting into the middle this year, we spent some time talking about projects that we are coupling with the referendum projects and trying to achieve some economy and scale, having contractors on site, all that good stuff. So this project here at the middle school would be taking advantage of Cullen and the paving contractor already on the job to replace the last section of asphalt there that really was used by every dump truck that went in and out of that job site for that whole project. And to be honest, it wasn't in the greatest condition before that. It's definitely ready to be taken care of now. Moving to the high school, we are going to start tackling some replacement windows from the original 1965 section of the building. This is in the current science classrooms that are being renovated to be future world language classrooms. So this would be replacing all of those windows that are south-facing on that part of the building. The last project at the high school is that area outlined in kind of blue. That is the area of pavement that is not covered by the referendum project. This piece of pavement was outlined in several deferred maintenance lists at much higher dollar value, but we're able to dial that scope back now to an area that we know isn't going to be touched in the future. So we're not, paving something in the future that in future years we'd be ripping up again. So that is the summary of projects for Fund 10. Moving to Fund 80 projects over at Schulberg Park. We're looking at installing gutters and downspouts on the pavilion. That's don't get a lot of complaints at Schulberg Park, but anybody that rents the pavilion in a rainstorm always would like to have some downspouts there so their guests don't get wet and so on and so forth. The park was constructed in the late 90s. The buildings have not been painted in a way that they should be painted since. So we are also proposing repainting all of the existing buildings there and also adding garage door openers on the main. Those are some big garage doors and staff isn't getting any younger throwing those things open every day. So that is the summary of projects both in Fund 10 and Fund 80 we are proposing for 2021-22. And this slide shows a summary of the project totals per building and projects totals per fund for a grand total of $750,000. I guess any questions on the project pieces before I dive into the proposed piece of equipment to replace this year?
Stephen, I have a question. This is Shelley. I just want to note that I had emailed you last week in regards to the tennis courts. That was on my radar.
So the
First
vehicle and
time-
equipment replacement schedule this year calls for the replacement of our 1999 Silverado pickup truck. That thing has seen some better days and definitely got our money's worth out of that. And we would be replacing it with a very similar truck, a 1500 4x4 truck that we're able to use year round. So. Sure.
Stephen, can you hear me? Stephen? Okay, Stephen, can you hear me? Stephen, can you hear me at all?
Now I can.
Can anybody hear me? Okay, I had emailed you a week ago about the tennis courts. When I was on the board the first time, over 5 years ago, that was on the radar for the 5-year plan, and that got pushed back probably from the 5 years before that. And it's in very bad repair again, even though we tried patching it. And Carrie talked about the safety of our facilities for not only the students, the athletes, the kids in gym class, plus the public. There were pictures I know that one of the coaches had shared, I think, with, a screwdriver going in one of the holes, and it's in very bad repair. But could you just give an update on what you told me about that?
There are pictures I know that one of the coaches what you told me about that.
I also look at it as an equity when all the other athletic facilities have been upgraded through the referendum or through locations of facilities, and then tennis is not.
So So what I had emailed Shelley back with that specific question is the tennis courts have been on the district's radar for a while. And a little bit of history on that is, maybe 3 years or so ago, we got to the point as a district where we were close to obtaining Central Park. We were close to making the improvements on Central Park to replace those tennis courts. We even went as far as having a civil engineer design the tennis courts. We had designed the parking lot. Like I said, the city was aboard at that time to give us the park, but through those negotiations and through other options that were out there at the time with the Midwest Tennis Center that was proposed out on the other side of town, there was other things that came up. That project had sort of fallen through the cracks, and then with the capital referendum passing, that kind of went down. I guess we hadn't resurfaced on that topic since. I can tell you that what we've done in the meantime is that we continue to, on an annual basis, every spring, try to patch those courts to make them safe and playable for yet another season. But back 2 or 3 years ago, our estimates at that time were about $350,000 for a total reconstruction of those courts, and that's where that sits since. Does that answer it, Shelley?
Yes, I just didn't know if we'd looked at any alternative sites for the teams to be able to play where it's safe and they can use the courts.
I guess that'd be something that we'd have to talk. I know Jeff isn't here tonight, but that'd be something that we'd have to talk with Jeff about. But that's right. I think we are using Premier Tennis and Fitness, and we also have to think too in the future that those tennis courts are not only used by our student athletes, but they're also used by FIAD and summer schools. So I mean, it's more people use it than meets the eye, but the student athletes are using indoor courts at this time.
Thank you.
Thank you. I guess any other questions on vehicles or projects?
I have a question. Obviously, some of these, a lot of these projects it's pretty high dollars, right? I would suspect that a number of these are going to go. You probably get several bids or quotes on. Is that correct?
That is correct. Okay. The majority of them have hard numbers to them already. There are a couple that are still in the works, like the East Air Handler, for example, is still under the engineering effort. And like the number you're looking at there is the engineer's number that they were able to provide to plan for.
So most of these where you have hard numbers on there, it's already gone through the multiple bids or multiple quote process.
Yeah. For example, like the roofing project, pretty high dollar amount.
Yeah.
We have a roofing consultant that helps us out with the development of the spec of the project. And then we bid out not only the labor for that project, but we also bid out the materials. So then based on the low bid of material, the low bid for labor, we package that together to present to you with the project total. And that is for any project that passes the dollar threshold for the board policy to do so.
Okay. And if that information would probably be available for anybody who would want to take a look at it, just to kind of see. I'm not proposing that you give that to the board, but just making that statement. Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Stephen, first of all, thanks for putting this together. I think it's great that we are getting caught up on some deferred maintenance that was from prior years and staying on top of it going forward. I also, recognize the value of the operational referendum passing that helps keep these things up to date. Looking to the future, the predictability and the stability in it for not only us, but for future boards as they look at these things is valuable. So, again, thank you for the effort putting it together and presenting it to us here tonight. It's much appreciated.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Stephen? Just to remind you, it is an action item.
I'd make a motion to approve the 5-year capital maintenance and improvement plan and the vehicle and equipment replacement schedule, specifically the projects and equipment outlined for the 2021 and 2022 fiscal years as presented.
I will second that.
Okay, we have a motion from Dave and a second from Mike to approve the 5-year capital plan as presented in board docs. Are there any other questions for Stephen or anyone before we vote?
I would agree with proposals, but just keeping in mind to have the safety of the courts and facilities checked.
Kim, is she able to type her question?
I'll put it in the chat box. That's good. I can share for those watching at home that Shelley put in the chat box that she'd agree with the budget, but with safety of the courts being checked out.
Is that an amendment then, or?
Well, as I mentioned, we are doing our annual service to the tennis courts, which means practically making everything all safe for the year. So that is being addressed for this season. That's under contract for like 2 weeks out. Since the weather will be here. That
Shelley gave a thumbs up to that after hearing it.
okay.
Any other questions at all? All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, thank you. Motion carries.
Thanks, Stephen.
All right, thank you, Mike. Next up on the agenda is the HR committee report. The HR committee met last week on Tuesday, the 16th, I think it was. First item that we had talked about was the update on the COVID-19 vaccine for staff. And Chris, can you go over those numbers with us?
I'm just working on the Mac.
Right now, it's the first time in a while I've used one. Okay, can you hear me, Carrie? All right, awesome. So as Rick had said, that we had a meeting on March 16th, and we talked about a number of items in the HR committee. And as Rich had given in his update this evening, we also talked about the vaccines for staff. And just to give you a quick update on that, January 27th, we had the majority of our staff become vaccinated with their initial shot with Mercy. On February 3rd, we had 40 additional staff members receive their initial shot from Mercy. And then the week of March 8th, through Rock County and Department of Health Services, the remaining 40 employees had received their initial shot. So right now, those that did their initial shot on the week of March 8th will be looking at receiving their second shot the first week of April, so right after spring break. So right now, I have not heard from any other employees that were looking to receive any kind of COVID vaccine shots that have not already gotten it. But now that as the more vaccines are made available, it is opening it up for other avenues for those shots, whether it's at Walgreens, CVS, or Walmart pharmacy. Any questions on that item?
Before we move on, I just did want to take one sec to thank thank Mercy and Rock County for taking the time and the resources to vaccinate our staff. I also wanted to thank the HR staff for all their work. I know that there was a lot of time and work put in on this. But I also wanted to just real quickly thank the families in the district because, yeah, there were some schedule changes going to the asynchronous, and I know that it was probably caused some inconveniences for some people, but I think in the long run it'll be worth it because then we can get everyone back into school next month. So I just wanted to thank the families for that too. So, any other questions about that? Okay, next is the wellness update with the health transformation consultant that has started recently.
Yes, absolutely, Rick. Last fall, if you recall, we had conversations about moving to a phased approach for our wellness clinic. Phase one was going to be hiring a transformation consultant, and this individual was going to help our staff with various wellness initiatives. And that was going to start in January. That process has started, and we have worked through that. Within your board packet, there's a write-up of what we shared with the HR committee. And that individual, Kathy Chambers, has met our staff via staff meetings at all of our buildings. And she has put together a video that the Human Resources Department had shared out with staff this last Friday. So for those staff members that were not part of those original meetings are able to watch Kathy's video and kind of get an introduction to her, as well as what she can do for the school district. As we go through these last 9 weeks of school, Kathy will be on site on Thursdays, moving around between the different buildings. So more to come on that. But in that packet too, or in that information that's included in your packet, there's a couple events that I wanted to draw your attention to. We had a mammogram event that employees took advantage of on March 10th, as well as on the personal wellness plan that we have also rolled out to our staff. That a number of staff have reached out to Kathy for her help and in consultation with her to go through that process. That, as you may know, over the years has evolved from the original finger prick, and then you get your cholesterol, your glucose levels. That is now more of a one-on-one conversation with the staff member about wellness. So it's going well. We've had 16 people so far as of March 11th sign up for that plan. And from an HR level, we keep pushing that information out for staff as a resource.
Chris, with the personal wellness plan, 16 people signing up is what, like 3 or 4% of the staff? Does Kathy Chambers have strategies to try to get that to a more representative level of the staff?
Well, right now, the best thing that we are doing is, from an HR level, is trying to promote that. Some of the feedback that we have received is that staff, there's just one additional thing that they would have to jump into. So we try to put it out there, float it out there to them as an option. But I think that's the best thing we can do in this current situation that we find ourselves.
Okay.
We're hoping more people will sign up for it. I myself have yet to sign up for it, but I plan on doing it. So those are the strategies for gently putting it out there.
Thank you.
I think it's like anything new, it's going to take time. People need to learn what Kathy's doing, what kind of things she offers. So hopefully with time, people will take advantage, go and talk to their colleagues in the buildings. And so we'll see how it goes.
Absolutely, Rick. And one thing I will add too, I believe we had with Dean and Mercy when we were doing the glucose levels, we had approximately 150 take advantage of that between both carriers. So yes, definitely a lower number than what we're used to. But like Rick said, we're hoping that it expands here shortly.
Any other questions or comments about the wellness update? Next item is the Benefits Advisory Group meeting review. The Benefits Advisory Group met, I'm sorry, Chris, I don't remember that date.
Thursday, March 11th.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Yeah. Can you go over that, please?
Absolutely. So during our Benefits Advisory Group, we have, let me step back. We've had a number of employees that were part of the Benefits Advisory Group that have since retired or have left the district. So this last fall, we really tried to reach out and garner more interest in the Benefits Advisory Group. So this meeting on March 11th would have been our second meeting of the year. And so it was really educating or continuing to educate employees that may not have been familiar with the process. And with the agenda items that were listed, it was talking about the Dean renewal that was coming up for this upcoming year. Currently, when the district went to a single provider, Dean had shared a rate cap of 6.9% if we stayed with our current point of service plan and offered our HRA with it. If the district decided to move to an HMO plan and the current HRA, there would be a 3.9% rate cap. Well, with Al's assistance, Dean has agreed to a 3.9% rate cap. And that's if we keep our current point of service and HRA plan. Now, that's the maximum that Dean would charge us. So really depending on what those claims come in at, will really dictate anywhere, I guess, 0 up to 3.9. So we'll know more once we get those renewal documents later this week or right after spring break. In addition to that conversation, we have shared out an HSA option, which would run side by side of our current point of service HRA plan. This is not a new topic. We have introduced the HSA concept to our staff, I want to say about 3 years ago with our Benefits Advisory Group. So for those of you that were on the board, you would have heard me talking about that from a Benefits Advisory Group, that we would share it out with our staff. They would give us feedback upon it, and then we'd come and present. We've never moved forward with that. And this year, there's no decision has been made. We're not looking to roll anything out. We're looking at options to control cost and possibly have cost avoidance. So we're currently looking and exploring these options. And as we look forward to the Delta Dental renewal, we are currently, if I remember correctly, at a 0%. So those are the items that we shared with our Benefits Advisory Group. And we're looking to schedule another meeting on April 14th at 4:30. A lot of information within your packet there that talks about an HSA, how that looks, side by side of our current point of service plan. But like I mentioned, no specifics on the plans yet at all, or if we are going to be rolling those out. Any questions about any of the topics underneath the Benefits Advisory Group?
So as it stands now, Chris, there aren't any definite changes to next year. Just lots of things that you're talking about.
Yep,
Okay.
very high level conversations, what ifs, if you will. That's pretty much it. Yep, absolutely. So those are options that we floated to figure out, like what kind of contributions would the district make in that first year. So if we did do something, a number of items would have to be put in place to be able to roll that out for July 1. Doable, but those conversations we definitely want to have with the HR committee, the board, about next steps.
Any other questions about any of that info from the Benefits Advisory Group? And the last item was the 2021-22 compensation plan timeline.
And later in your, in the board meeting, there's teacher contracts to review. But we are currently, as an HR and payroll department, worked on wrapping those up. We are currently working on the salary explanations to roll out to staff here, ideally in the next day or two. And now switch gears to working on 21-22. So at the HR committee level, one of the things that we need to be aware of is the 21-22 contracts need to be reviewed and possibly approved by the Board of Education on May 10th. That's our first board meeting in May. And that's because of state statute where contracts have to be in teachers' hands by April 15th. This year, April 15th is a Saturday, so we're shooting for the 14th on having those contracts in teacher hands. We are also looking at other employee groups, support staff administrators, and more information will be shared out at upcoming HR committee meetings. And we're talking in exec session about some more of those details, about a plan and timeline.
All right, thank you, Chris. Any questions at all about that? All right, thank you, Chris. And that is it for HR. Next on the agenda is the Transportation Committee report. Dave?
Thanks, Rick. Transportation Committee met on Wednesday, March 17th to discuss a couple of items. The first item was the Buy a Seat program. Buy a Seat, you may recall, we discussed earlier this year. The program was started approximately a decade ago, and over that period of time did not receive a lot of updates. And so meeting last year and into this year, we made a couple updates to try to keep the program cost effective, not only for parents, but for the context of the district at large. Couple items that were discussed, and here for our decision tonight, I'll invite Carrie or whomever else wants to chime in at any point. The first item was to take the fee for the Buy a Seat program from $200 for an individual or $400 for a maximum family cap, regardless of the number of children, and adding $20 to the $200 and $40 to the $400. It's approximately $600 to $700 of cost per student from the analysis from Rightway, if I'm not mistaken. And Carrie, if I am, please correct me. And so in doing so, the program still remains subsidized heavily by the district, but rather than we're trying to avoid, I should say, having drastic changes after periods of inactivity and try to present it as more of an inflationary change. Carrie, did I represent that correctly?
I believe so.
Okay.
If I can just comment on one thing, which I'm not sure if I heard you say or not, but part of the discussion that the committee had was around balancing, providing a service, right, at a reasonable price to parents, yet having an appropriate revenue for that service as well. And I'm not sure if you quite phrased it that way. And to me, that was the crux of the conversation, is that we were talking about, it is a great service for parents, but yet there should be a cost to parents, and you're targeting that appropriate cost.
Correct. Thank you, Carrie. That item will be up for a decision for the board tonight. The other item is an update to bus routes. With the 7 through 12 kids having an opportunity to come back full-time here after spring break. Some rearranging of the routes in order to ensure we try to stay under our maximum number of students per bus is underway. Part of it being subject to who opts to go, if anyone opts to go, to fully virtual from in person today. Carrie, have there been any updates with that since our last meeting last week?
No updates. Nope, no updates since our meeting. I'm just checking with Mrs. Kramer. She's our direct contact with Go Right Way on that one.
Very good. Mrs. Kramer, any other feedback or thoughts that you'd like to add, or perhaps okay, thank you. With that, I guess I would open it up to any questions from the board. Otherwise, we will need a motion to enact that change.
Carrie, how many people participate in the Buy a Seat program?
75 families have signed up.
Okay.
And that's about 90 children. I believe 2/3 of them choose the round trip option.
Okay.
And another third choose the one-way option.
And how's that trending over the course of this program?
I think you're going to have a hard time finding trends in the program just because of in the short time I have been here, we had areas that used to be Buy a Seat that became hazardous transportation zones, and then the district is obligated to provide transportation. And then this year, we have had, we implemented our attendance boundaries. And so that would impact potentially parent choices depending upon their childcare needs if they attended outside of their attendance zone. So I think we could try and find trend data, but I think it might be hard to see a trend just because of the changes in eligibility for transportation and then the parent choice piece. But we can certainly begin collecting that. And then next year is year 2 of living with our attendance zones or attendance areas. So it should maybe become more predictable.
Are we obligated for a particular number, or are we just charged the rate? Obviously this isn't a money-making program. So, but are we obligated to have 50 families in the program? Okay.
No, maybe just talk about that a little bit more, because I was listening, but I wasn't probably attending as well as I should have been when you were speaking, because I think you kind of spoke to this issue. So we have our transportation with Go Right Way to provide our regular routes to and between school and home, or school and daycare provider. And those routes then, children that are eligible ride for free, and then parents may choose to buy a seat. That doesn't impact our what we pay the bus company. Okay, our bus contract is based on the number of routes that we need to cover our square mileage in a certain amount of time, and it's really geared toward students we have an obligation to provide free transportation to. But typically, the routes can be designed so that there's room on the bus for these children to ride as well. So when we talk about the per student cost, it's a calculation based on how much we spend on that transportation to get kids back and forth between home and school, and the number of students that we can transport. So that's where the balancing comes in that if we do that calculation, it's going to come in higher than our rate. And we also know that other districts are charging more. And for next year, maybe we'll do actually a formal to dig in a little deeper. So that's why I'm saying the goal is really to charge a reasonable rate to parents so that we'll have a revenue for providing a service we're not obligated to provide. But as far as an additional cost, that's a softer piece that we're looking at. Does that make sense? Okay.
Any other questions?
So I will make a motion to increase the 2021 school year biosafety program round trip fee to $220 and the one-way fee to $110 and increase the family cap to $440.
I'll second it.
All right, we have a motion from Mike with a second by Dave to increase those by seat dollar amounts to those stated. Any other questions at all about that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Was that all you had then, Dave?
I guess I.
Where's-
A and B.
Okay.
Transportation report and B do not require a vote. Mr. Kramer, if you had anything you wanted to add with bus routes, certainly we can, otherwise we'll. take it off.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dave. 7 is new business, discussion and possible action on 2020-21 teacher compensation.
Okay, within your packet is a list of all of the teachers and their 2021 compensation. And then a recommended motion. Any questions about the list? That came off of our negotiations that we have done since last October, as well as the STEP and the educational lanes.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2020-2021 compensation for teachers as presented.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion from Mike with a second by Dave to approve the compensation as presented. Before we do vote on this, I just want to once again thank all of our teaching staff, first of all, for everything that they do, but also for their patience as we worked our way through this. Does anyone have any questions or comments before we vote? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is action on 2020-2021 open enrollment alternative applications, and those are listed in board docs as usual.
2 incoming applications. 0.
I'll make a motion to approve the staffing report as presented. Oh, sorry. I'll make a motion to approve it. Where'd it go? There it is. Make a motion to approve the 2021 open enrollment alternative applications as presented.
I'll second.
All right. Thank you. Motion from Jen, seconded by Dave. Any questions at all? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next, moving on to miscellaneous. A, action on staffing reports.
I will make a motion to approve the staffing report as presented.
Second.
Motion from Mike, seconded by Jen to approve the staffing report. Any questions or comments about that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. B is action on gifts and donations.
I'll make a motion to approve the gifts and donations with gratitude.
I'll second.
All right, motion from Dave, seconded by Jen to accept the gifts. Any, are all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Next up is meeting dates.
We have a number of upcoming meetings, so I'll go through them. Some of them are already scheduled, some we need to firm up the time. First, from March 29th through April 2nd, upcoming next week is spring break. We have a policy committee meeting scheduled for April 6th at 6:30 p.m. Here in the PDC. We have an HR committee meeting for April 7th at 4:30 p.m. here in the PDC. The next regular school board meeting is on April 12th at 6:30. And please note that upcoming meeting will be at Milton High School. That's April 12th, 6:30. Next regular school board meeting will be at Milton High School. We'll be doing a tour of the STEM wing at that time. On April 13th, HR committee meeting, we're still firming up the time on that. On April 14th, the Benefits Advisory Group meeting at 4:30, and that will be a virtual meeting. On April 15th, the HR committee meeting, and we still need to firm up the time on that meeting. April 21st, HR committee meeting at 4:30 here in the PDC. And then the second board meeting for April is on April 26th as regular school board meeting. That'll start at 6:30 here in the PDC. I'll also be reaching out to the Strategic Planning Committee to schedule a meeting at some point in April, but I need to look at some possible dates. So I'll email that out to the Strategic Planning Committee, some different possible dates, and get some more input from them on what their availability looks like.
Kim, when do the new members get seated?
The 26th of April.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
April 6th, election day.
Yes, April 6th is election day. Remember to get out and vote, everyone.
Is that it for dates, Rich?
Yes.
Okay. Next, moving into executive session. I would entertain a motion to go into executive session. Statute 19.85 sub 1 sub C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. Planning for 2021-22 compensation for all staff.
I'll second.
I'm sorry, who made that motion?
So moved. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you made the motion. Sorry, my bad. I just made it.
Okay. Okay, so motion from Mike, seconded by Dave. We'll roll call this. Jen?
Yes.
Rex, yes. Mike?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Shelley?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
I read her notes.
All right. All right, motion carries. We are in executive session and we'll be adjourning from executive session, right? Yeah, okay. All right, thank you all. Everyone have a good spring break.